Oh my goodness, it's Sunday night, which means it's Sunday night service. And I'm Dani Williamson.
Adam Kimble.
This is Adam Kimble. He is not Dr. Motley, but Dr. Motley will be back next week, and we'll be talking on Candida tomorrow night. But as soon as you, hey Holly, how are you, sweet friend? As soon as you guys get logged on tonight, I need you to hit your heart buttons, hit your like buttons, and then hit share in the bottom left-hand corner if you're on your phone. Then hit start a watch party, and then hit boom, start a watch party twice. Please do that. Billy, you do that as well. It's good to see you, my friend, and Ann, and all of you all. Nancy, heart buttons, like buttons, hit share, start a watch party, and share, because we are talking adverse childhood events tonight. And I'm going to tell you, I can thank Adam Kimble for actually bringing this to my attention. I knew a little about it, but I didn't know much about it. And if you Google that online, you'll find all kinds of things. But we're going to break it down tonight, and we're going to talk through it the next hour here. And if any of you want to post your score up here, you can. I'll answer the questions after this. But there's a link right here at the top for you to click on that, and you can take the test as well. It actually comes off of NPR. They must have done a big story on this, and it was real easy, the 10-question test. So I'm going to share mine. But adverse childhood experiences, right? So in 1998, the CDC and Kaiser Permanente, as well as a whole group of doctors, Dr. Folletti being the main researcher on this study, they did this study on adverse childhood events, which, you know, determined, honestly, depending on what events you had or how many you had, could shorten your lifespan by 20 years or sooner than your peers with a score of 0. Unbelievable. Persons with a score of 7 or more have a 3 times greater risk for a lifetime risk of lung cancer, 3.5 times more likely for ischemic heart disease, which is the #1 killer in America. Exposure to early adversity in the home or in our life affects the developing brains and the bodies of our children. It is unbelievable when you start reading this research. It affects the brain and the parts of the brain responsible for impulse control, fear, and more, right? You are more likely to take part in risky behaviors if you have multiple adverse events. But even if you do not take part in risky behaviors, you are still more likely to develop heart disease and cancer. Like, I never really took part in risky things. Like, I didn't do drugs, I didn't smoke, I wasn't a huge drinker, but I still have a higher risk of heart disease and cancer with my score. My score was a 6, which actually is similar to yours, right? 6 as well, right? Yeah. So the mean age of this study was 56.1 years of age. So they actually studied adults, right, instead of children. Any one ACE, if there's any one ACE that's present, there is an 87% chance that there's going to be another ACE score present as well, and a 50% chance that there would be 3 others, okay? So this study is about, basically, I was listening to multiple webinars the last couple of days on this, about how do we get from a newborn baby, safe, swaddled in the house, right, a safe baby, to the homeless man on the street, or the person over there suffering, dying on hospice of AIDS. How does that happen? What happens in that lifespan there? And again, those are the extremes, but the study is about that. It was the largest study to date. There were more than 17,000 participants in this study, which is huge, right? Yeah. Absolutely huge. Studying what happens in childhood that affects the future of the adult. And here's what they found, that ACEs, adverse childhood events or experiences, I'm going to say ACEs, right, are very common, but mostly unrecognized. And I believe that. And we'll talk about why I think that. ACEs are strong predictors of adult social functioning, well-being, health risks, disease, and death. From these 10 or 7, you said the original test was 7.
The original test was 7 questions, yeah.
But from the 10 that we took, a huge predictor of disease and death for us. This combination makes ACEs the leading determinant of the health, social well-being, and the economy of the nation. The nation. I mean, we're missing this, people. We're missing this in pediatric offices
Right.
where we should be testing these children immediately, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, right? They chose 10 categories of ACEs to study: major emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional and physical neglect, alcoholism or drugs in the home, the loss of a parent from death or divorce, depression or mental illness in the home, and the mother treated violently by her partner, or was there an imprisoned household member? Those were what they studied. These are the questions. What they found was that 67% of the adult population had at least one ACE. 67%. 12.6, or 1 in 8, had 4 or more ACEs. 12.6%. They found that there's a dose-response relationship to ACEs and health outcomes. What that means is the higher the ACE score, the worse the health outcomes. And multiple diseases you could have.
Drastic difference.
Huge.
The percentage risk that you're at rises precipitously.
So they discovered that having which is perfect because this is what I'm getting ready to get into, that having an ACE score above 4 dramatically increased the risk of 7 out of 10 of the leading causes of death in the United States. And globally, it increased the risk of 5 out of 10 of the leading causes of death. And here's what they discovered. If you have an ACE score higher than 4, and mine was a 6, his was a 6, and I've seen what some of yours were that you posted online. Some of you even had 9s, 8s and 7s. If it's greater than 4, you have a 12.2 times more likely. You are 12.2 times more likely to commit suicide.
12 times.
12 times more likely to commit suicide. 10 times more likely to use injection drugs. 7.4 times more likely to become an alcoholic. What? Okay, wait, there's more.
It's dramatic.
This is terrible.
I mean, if they said, we gave you this drug and this drug increases your rate of suicide by 40%, it would be headline news. This is 12 times.
Yes, I know.
12 times.
And it's how we're raised and what's going on in the home. Unbelievable. 2.2 times more likely to have ischemic heart disease. Again, the #1 killer in the United States. 2.5 times more likely to have a stroke. 1.9 times more likely to have cancer. 1.6 times more likely to be a diabetic. And so as I'm studying all of this, in functional medicine, you think, okay, why? Why is that? Why do you have a higher rate of this if you were raised in a stressful house, or if you were sexually abused as a child, or you were bullied in high school, or you were bullied at home by a mom, a dad, or a sibling, or you were, your parents divorced or one died? Why is that? Well, the reason is because of the HPA axis. So your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis, is your fight or flight response, right? If somebody busts through this door right now while we're doing this in our kitchen and they have a gun, it is your adrenals, your HPA axis, that shuts down. Your eyes get wide, your heart goes up, your heartbeat goes up, your everything stops, your digestion stops, and you're able to do whatever it is you need to do in the moment of a crisis. Well, this is what happens over and over and over again with adverse childhood events. That bear that maybe was chasing us in the woods, or that man that came through that door right there, that's a constant thing. The bear keeps coming up. The bear or the robber is the parent where the child has to come home from school every day, or the bully in the hallway where you have to get off the bus and you have to go to school every morning and face that. That is the reason that this is so detrimental to our health long term, because you never are able to bring that sympathetic tone down. Am I right?
That's right.
Okay, so that's what he knows this stuff
That's
backwards and forwards. Right. I don't know it, but this is what I surmised from all of this that I was reading. And so when that HPA axis is activated every day or every night in a child, that's where we get into trouble. So the original ACEs study was done in a population that was 70% Caucasian and 70% college educated. So this is not an isolated issue. You think, yeah, this is a brown or a black problem, right? Hispanic problem, some of that an immigrant problem. No, it's not. This is across the board. This is brown, black, white, every socioeconomic status out there. This involves. It is a public health crisis is what this is. And
Absolutely.
That's exactly what they say. Women who have a 50% more women are 50% more likely than men to have an ACE score greater than 5. Now, isn't that something?
Yeah, that's interesting too.
And I don't know the root of that and why. I don't know. Maybe we are molested more,
Right.
Possibly.
Right.
Maybe we're beat up more. I mean, I don't know. Maybe
More vulnerable.
we're more vulnerable. That's correct. And again, mine was a score of 6. So, it's interesting. But tonight, we're going to have Adam here. Now, you guys, that's 10 minutes into this. I need you guys sharing, starting your watch parties, all these things going on and hitting your buttons because this is a big deal. Adam, man, he's passionate. He is about all things health, spirit, emotional, physical, mental, all the things, right? Am I right?
I am.
He has been a teacher and a small group facilitator for 20 years with theotherapy seminars, which I learned all about from him. I don't know if you're going to talk about that tonight or not, but he, had a deep dive into his own healing journey during that time. And he learned that healing takes place in the presence of safety and love.
Absolutely.
Amen to that. I learned that at onsite. At onsite.
Yeah.
Yes.
I figured
Yes. I mean, unbelievable. It was the first time I ever felt safe in my life to share my story. Right. And he's actually gone through, where is this? Experiential therapy training at onsite. Finished most of the coursework for certification in emotional and spiritual care for disaster relief by the Critical Incident Stress Foundation. Good Lord, that sounds serious. He's an IT project manager by day. Which when you all see the document that he's got for you all that I will attach, you'll know that he's an IT guy because it's all fancy, whereas mine is like all just typed up on a Word thing. He loves people and he loves to help people solve challenges and work through change to arrive in a better place. And I'm telling you, if you've ever met this guy, you exude peace. But I assume that comes from decades of work.
Yes. Absolutely.
Cheers. Sunday night service. We forgot. Sunday night service. Sunday night, guys, to
You're
you
the
all.
reason we're here.
That's exactly right. And so I'm going to sit back and he's going to share about ACEs and about his own journey and, how he's turned his journey into helping others heal and thrive. And I'm going to sit back until the conclusion and see what we learn. I'm going to look here on Facebook while you guys are listening.
Thanks, Dani.
Yes,
Appreciate
sir.
that.
No, thank you.
I just like to confirm what you were talking about on the, so you're bridging the gap there of why do these ACEs correlate to the ill effects with health, social, and so on. And I totally agree that, right? So our bodies, we have the capability to respond to trauma.
Yes.
If you walk to the curb and about to take a step and a car comes flying by, right? For 30 seconds, right? You feel this jolt, you jump back and there's this jolt of adrenaline.
Yes.
Your body then, okay, I'm safe. I made it. Woo, that was a close call. Your body calms down.
Yes.
By the time you're across the street or walking a little bit further down the road, you're back to normal, the way it's supposed to work.
That's exactly right.
But when you are in an environment, like you said, school, bullying, home, if there was abuse and trauma at home, alcoholism, physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, divorce, right? And so on, and fill in the blanks because there's lots more. But the rush, your body's response, your emotion or your mind, your immune system's response to the trauma and the state of alarm, shoots cortisol and adrenaline, and it never comes down.
It never comes down.
It essentially gets stuck in high gear.
Yes.
Because you are perpetually, it's an ongoing trauma, which is abnormal, common, but abnormal for your body system. And so your system gets stuck in fight and flight mode and that sort of thing. So that's why our systems are, and what happens is our immune system gets shot.
Yes.
Our adrenals can get shot,
yes.
and so on.
Yes.
And so now, after decades, you see these ill effects.
Yes.
I mean, not to say, and
they're
I mean,
sitting in my office
we're going right
or
over
any
the-
other provider,
yeah.
healthcare provider's
And I
office.
mean, and we're saying physical, but right, there's social, emotional. It affects your ability to have friends and
Yes,
groups
it
and
does.
make connections and be
Yes, it
safe
does.
with people, form healthy relationships. But then after decades of your body in that state of heightened hypertension like that, it starts manifesting and breakdown.
Yes.
Because your body can't be on high cortisol, high adrenaline alert for that time. It floods your brain, it floods your immune system, your muscles, and everything starts breaking down. So you end up with the kind of physical elements that they talk about. There are so many of them. I have a chart that I pulled.
I'll share this with you guys, his chart. It's pretty.
So I'm looking at a chart: arthritis, asthma, cancer, COPD, diabetes, heart attack, heart disease, kidney disease, stroke, vision, and it's not all of them. But as you go from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 ACEs and so on, the percent risk that you are of these things skyrockets. So,
And 4 was their kind of cutoff where they just 4 or above. I mean, it just,
it's red, Danger Will Robinson, so
unbelievable.
I know that this is our tribe, right? We're all here because we have some sort of ailments that
Right.
we want. We know that we're looking for a more natural approach. We're looking for ways to address what ails us and get more to the root cause. Functional medicine is about root cause analysis.
That's
What's it causing? Let's not just treat the symptoms. Might be a place for that, but we want to get to the root cause. And we look at this and we go, well, holy crap. This is probably a more significant root cause factor than anything we're treating.
You bet it is. You are right. In fact, well, I'll talk about that in the conclusion, what the American Academy of Pediatrics says about this.
Yeah.
It's a public health crisis.
Yeah.
And this needs to be addressed in early childhood now.
Yeah,
Now,
that's what.
in retrospect, like the story was done. I mean, the study was done.
Yeah.
We're backpedaling, right? We're just trying to get it all back in. It's like I tell patients, something tips your bowl over, right?
I mean, this test was done in what, 98, right?
1998.
1998.
Yes.
How many of you have heard from your doctor when you go in from a primary care or whatever? How many asked you, well, let's take a look at your ACEs?
Yeah, not a single one.
And this was done 20 years ago.
Isn't that something?
It's not
I've
making.
never once heard about it. I spent $200,000 in an education.
I mean,
I'm sorry. They should have brought this up to us, especially in our pediatric, right?
They have
Even
a hammer, so they want to see where's a nail. That's all they're interested in.
Yeah, I know.
This is not a nail for them to hammer, so the tools in their chest does not affect this.
Well, it's maddening. And I was listening to this Dr. Barrett or Burkett. I can't remember, but anyway, I shared her YouTube, guys, for you all on Facebook today. She's a pediatrician in San Francisco. And when her colleague walked in, like not too many years ago, and handed her this study, this is the actual study right here that I printed off of PubMed and read through with a fine-tooth comb today. It changed her entire pediatric practice. She said she had no idea. She thought her colleagues were going to all be on board with this, right? And be as pumped up as she was. And they shut her down. Shut her down.
Yeah.
They weren't interested in this.
No.
This takes more time
Yes.
when you ask,
Yes.
when you give this
I can't write a
questionnaire,
prescription for that.
which is free online. And I just printed this off. We're going to have to retype a few things for us, but we're going to put this in all of our new patient packets now because it's something I need to know that's filled out ahead of time.
That's great.
Well, for
love
the
that.
10 years of you who've seen me for 10 years who didn't get this, ask and we'll do this at your follow-up
That's
visits.
great.
But the new
That's great.
patients are going to be getting this because I'm telling, and thanks to him, because I had no idea. And I feel,
Well,
I'm sorry.
I mean, so it's probably just not a whole leap. Just talking to you about this and talking about the impact it's like I'm sure a lot of you are just going, that makes complete sense.
right.
What are we doing about it, right? Where can we go from here? And I saw some of the things when I Googled. If you Google ACEs, you'll see a whole lot of stuff. But there seems to be efforts to try to identify more early screening, periodic screening for ACEs, so they can identify them, and then try to bring in community resources to try to help them to identify and understand the impact, and to then take actions to heal and recover from that. Resiliency is another term that they use. Building, there's some efforts to build resiliency. That's a lot of skills. So I think
resiliency is huge.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of YouTube videos on ACEs and resiliency that I watched today while I was making a beef stew over there. I just kept playing them over and over and over. And it's just, I love learning something new. But then I get so frustrated because, oh my gosh, I've missed it for so many years.
Yeah.
I know. And I'm not young anymore. I'm not 30 anymore. I got things to catch up on.
One day at a time.
I'm telling you. Yes.
But, building resiliency is important. And if you build it when they're young,
yes,
right, you can probably avoid a lot. It can make movement along the line from the ill effects to health, healthy relationships, bring the cortisol down, teach them skills. I mean, practical skills like meditation and learning how to quiet, the immune system, the vagus nerve and everything that will help. Those are very helpful.
Yes.
They're tools to help, become self-aware that we are in a heightened state of alertness. And there are so many tools that can help us then bring ourselves down to a more calm state, which should prove a lot, very effective.
Yes.
And then there's some other tools, right? So I think a lot of the tools that get a lot of focus, and they're good and they're useful, but they're control mechanisms.
Right.
Not that that's bad.
Right.
But it's not dealing with the root cause.
The root cause, that's
so
right.
So trauma of relational sorts like that affects us relationally.
Yes.
Affects our heart and our ability to relate to others because
Yes.
what was related to us was so dysfunctional.
Yes.
So you have to go back to the relational, to the heart, to the wounds in the heart and the spirit and the soul and address them.
Is that the wound anatomy, the wound A, wound B? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, those are types of wounds, but yes. So what I'm saying is it's not an easy thing to talk about, but when we talk about a lot of pain from early trauma experiences, I really believe that you have to go back to them and face them and work through them.
Yes.
So, you don't invite people over to your house. Hey, come on over Sunday night. We're going to have a wound healing party.
No.
I'm in. Yeah, let's do that.
No,
are you providing the wine?
Yeah. No, that's what they do at on-site. A wound healing week. Oh, my goodness.
It almost creates trauma right in the cortisol, but just to think about dealing with those wounds. It's such a difficult thing. But we all have it.
Yes,
right?
We do.
And we don't talk about it because, number one, it's hard in ourselves to talk about. We don't want to face those things in ourselves. Because we don't know what to do with them. It's not so easy. There's not a drug. There's not just a control technique that resolves it. And no, that's great. Let's move on.
That's right.
It's not that simple. So we're not equipped. We don't know what to do.
No.
And so many places where we go when we try to open up, even sometimes, unfortunately, churches aren't always the safest place to talk about the traumas that you had.
No.
For various reasons. I won't go into that too much detail, but they sometimes also will try to quick fix. And healing is a long journey.
You bet it is.
It's a long journey. And what we need is people who will come alongside and walk with us through that and be present with us in our pain. There was a great article in the paper. I don't know if people saw it. Many of the people listening saw it, but Trent Dilfer was a quarterback for the Ravens, and he's now going to quarterback, I think, Lipscomb, I think it is. And he's
the quarterback for Lipscomb?
No, he was a quarterback for the
Ravens.
In the NFL for the Ravens.
Yeah.
Won a Super Bowl.
Now he's the coach?
He's just accepted a position to become the coach.
Oh, at Lipscomb.
Wow.
Lipscomb. Okay.
And there was an article about how trauma in his life, he lost his son.
Oh.
Yeah, well, this is when he was an NFL quarterback. And Hasselbeck, I forget Hasselbeck's first name. He used to be quarterback for the Titans, but before that, they both were quarterbacks at the Seattle Seahawks. One of the things that Hasselbeck did, he saw that he was devastated and had no ability just to even come to practice when this happened.
Okay.
He went over his house, and without talking about it, he sat and they played video games, and he would sit there and not say anything and play through the night, all night long.
Wow.
And he kept doing that and kept doing it until he just said, okay, I'm done. I don't need to play anymore tonight. And eventually it helped him to work through it and
Wow.
come back to the team and get involved and find reason to come back. But that's sort of presence.
Just being present.
being
That's
with
right.
them. He didn't have to have answers. He didn't have to do surgery on his heart, emotional heart,
Right.
to help him
Right.
through. He didn't have to know how to do that or what the answers were. He's just present with
Just
him.
being there.
And it
That's
was
right.
huge. That provided a huge breakthrough for Trent Dilfer
Sure.
to come get through that.
Yeah.
That's how powerful presence, just being with people. And we don't have, that's a gift. To me, the way I put it is, when you are invited to walk with someone through their pain, to me, that's a sacred thing.
You bet.
It is a sacred invitation. It's a sacred thing to do. I really believe that.
I believe that.
So,
and that's what we should do
yeah.
is, even if we don't understand the pain, we should tell somebody, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I maybe don't agree with whatever's going on, but I will walk with you through this.
Right.
Side by side,
Right.
side by side.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
yes. And when you have somebody who does that, I had somebody who did that for me 20 something years ago when I went through an affair and all kinds of things in Paducah, and I was asked to leave my church because of it, and that I was not welcome there anymore. I wasn't welcome in the women's ministry, all these things. There was one person in the First Baptist Church there in Paducah who stepped up to me and said, I don't understand this, but I will walk with you through this. And we are friends to this day. I just got a letter in the mail from her this past week.
You'll never forget.
I'll
that,
never
will you?
forget her. And it was unbelievable. Yes. And she knew that I opened the front door one day and was told by the preacher's wife, we don't need your services in the women's ministry anymore. It was devastating. So I totally get that. And I understand. Yes, I completely get it. And churches should be a safe haven. They should emulate what Jesus would do, right? They should.
Yep. Well,
but sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
Yes.
The big picture there is we need safety.
We
Right?
need
If we're
safety.
going
We
to
need to
deal
be safe. That's
with
right.
wounded hearts and trauma, we need safety.
That's exactly right.
It's not going to happen if we're not safe. And because trauma is a very unsafe place, it's a very unsafe event.
Yes. Yes.
And it shuts us down. And sometimes if you add shame to that,
Oh, yeah.
right? If it's not just trauma, you're seeing mom abused or you're seeing dad leave or something happened to somebody else. But if it was hurled at you and you were belittled and you were put down and you were abused, it can be very shaming.
Yes.
And so shaming also shuts us down. It makes us want to hide, because the message of shaming is you are not what you ought to be.
Yes.
It makes us feel that who I am is not enough.
We're not enough.
There's something wrong with who I am. The way I was made is broken.
That's something.
And that's what shame does. So it takes incredible safety to actually start to talk about that
Yes.
and to start to reveal what's happened to you. It's so tender and it's so vulnerable. So it doesn't matter whether it's church or anywhere else.
That's right.
The point is we need safety,
Yes.
and that we don't have to have answers to provide a safe place for each other. If we learn to not give quick pat answers, not to invalidate people's feelings, but to just be present with them.
Just be
It's
present.
amazing how strong, how big that is to be present.
Well, we always feel like we have to say something, right?
Right.
And just like Hasselbeck did, they didn't say anything. They
Right.
just sat
That's
there
right.
and played games, just being there, just knowing, yes, is huge. But we do feel like we always have to say something. And
Yeah.
then half the time we say the
Yeah.
wrong thing and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. So I mean, my journey. It's a little bit sensitive, a little difficult to grow up. My mom and dad lived 3 miles from me, and I love them. I have a great relationship with them this day. But I did have a lot of trauma growing up. I did,
that's something.
and it had a lot of effects on me. I grew up in my teens. I remember 2 overwhelming emotions. One was anger, and one was shame.
Mm-hmm.
One fear. Fear was more anger and fear. Shame was underneath that.
Yes.
And I'm a faith-based. I was raised in church, and I always, you see offers for seminars to come along when I was 20s teenager. I had a wonderful experience in my teens with this church that was we call it a New Testament-like church. It was a very, very loving place, and I learned what it was like for people. It was really kind of a coffee house that grew into a church. And they loved each other so passionately, and they walked out that in a way that impacted me. I looked at that and went, now that I can be part of.
Okay.
I want this. I wanted to. And just that love, that healing that I had there was transformational for me.
Right.
But that love, although it did amazing things for me, I still had deeper wounds that did not heal. And I knew that, and it began to play itself out in my life. I walked away from the church for a period of 9 years, and I eventually came back, and it was part of my journey learning that there is more that I'm not dealing with that I need to reach in and get to, and that these things are impacting me, and coming to face and coming to grips with that. So when I came back, I realized that I had these deeper wounds that hadn't been touched, hadn't been resolved.
Right.
Looked for opportunities, went to some seminars, Minruth and Meyer and different things, Gary Smalley. There's great stuff out there. There's always good. I always walked away with something beneficial.
Right.
Then theotherapy came along. I moved down to Nashville. I grew up in New York. And I moved down to Nashville, and they had this theotherapy, I had these seminars, and people were telling me how great it was. And I went to one weekend. My mind was blown what they did in a weekend seminar. And they made it safe and had the skills and knowledge and knew how to be safe. When they broke down into small groups, people would walk back into their painful places and walk right back into it where they left off and pick up. And they were able to help them to find healing, and in this sense, because it's a faith-based context, to find God in the midst of that pain.
Okay.
And it was the stuff that would go on in those groups. I mean, jaw-dropping.
Yes.
And I just one experience of that, I was like, oh my gosh, I need this, and I want to do this. I want to learn how to do this, and I need this for my own life. So that took me into a deep dive, into really look more closely. And it took years for some stuff, right? Some stuff comes up easily, some stuff not so easy.
Right.
And so that was transformational. I'm still healing, but the impact on my life, I used to be emotional, but you wouldn't know that because the emotions were all inside me. I couldn't express them. I emoted internally because that's what I had to do growing up. It wasn't safe to express myself growing up. So I expressed myself in my head. And so that became a safe place where I could start to share with others and talk with others and start to deal with things. This is probably a good place to maybe segue in about the A wounds and B wounds.
Yes, I want you to share that because we're already.
So there's different kinds of wounding.
So he's going to talk about A wounds and B wounds, and this is fascinating. When we were talking to him at the office, Allie and I were blown away by this.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I learned, and this is from a book, it's in the resource if she posts this, it was a book called Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You. It's a phenomenal book. It's thin, and I couldn't read more than half a page or a page, and I had to just stop, put it down, and go, I have to think about that. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
It's that kind of a book. Very, very insightful. And this came from that book. So wounds of absence and wounds of bad things done to you.
Okay.
So when we
there's
think
two kinds of
wounding,
wounds:
we think
wounds
of
of
trauma.
absence, wounds of bad things done to you. So think of that.
So the B
Keep that in your
type,
head.
things that happen to us,
Okay.
are the kinds that we probably typically think of,
Okay.
right?
The
I
abuse.
remember the time
Okay.
when something happened.
Okay.
Those are B wounds.
Okay.
Because if you can remember it, it's a B wound.
Okay.
I remember when, the day when Daddy left.
Right.
I remember
it
the
well.
day when I watched Daddy beat Mommy. I remember the day when my mother told me you'll never amount to shit or whatever,
but
right?
you're always half-assed. You're half-assed.
There you
That's
go.
what I was
Yeah.
told constantly. You do
Right.
everything half-assed.
So B wounds is evil done to you. So it's bad.
Okay.
B for bad
Okay.
things that happen to us.
Okay.
And A wounds are the neglect, the absence, A for absence, things that we needed that was never given to us.
Oh, okay.
So if you took a baby and sat him on a ledge and didn't give that baby attention and time and caressing and food, right?
Right.
Would that baby survive? That baby would die, right?
Right, correct.
Because life has to be poured into us.
Yes.
Life has to be poured into us. That's how we are healthy. We're not healthy from the absence of bad things happening to us.
That's right. No,
that doesn't
we're
make
not.
us
No.
healthy.
Nope.
So it's a wound. It's a deep wounding when we were neglected. We never received what we needed.
Okay.
That's partly why people sometimes when they go back, they can get stuck with looking at the wounding when they're ambivalent about parents, if it came from home and parents, right? That sometimes it's, but I love my parents, but my parents were good.
Yes.
So
yes.
that's part of black and white thinking, right?
Yes.
When we're young, we have black and white thinking. It's all good or all bad.
That's right.
Our parents were kind of God to us, so therefore they're all good. And if anything goes haywire, we tend to think I'm the bad one.
Yes.
We put it on ourselves. Well, it's that same type of black and white thinking that we use when we think that, well, my parents loved me. They did good things to me. So I can't, so I had a good upbringing. But it's not all or nothing.
Right.
So everybody, me, you, everyone has the capacity for both good and evil.
Yes. That's
Every
true.
one of us. Every one of us. This is why the political environment and what we do in churches and all over is really, really sad, because we want people to be perfect. And when we find out they're broken, we crucify them. We absolutely destroy them because now they're no longer living up to the pedestal we put them on.
That's right.
And it's just, people can't be real. It's not safe to be real because of that sort of attitude.
That's right.
Everybody has the capacity for good and evil. And if the right thing comes along, we will act out of a place in our heart that's needy and wounded, or we may act like the hand of God, right? We may act like we've got such good joy and pour life into someone and love them the way that we would like to. It all depends on the circumstances and what gets triggered inside of us.
Sure. Triggers.
So both are capacity. So it's a mixture, right? So our parents gave us good, and our parents, there's some neglectful things that they couldn't give us because they never received it.
Right.
And there's some things they just missed. They got wrong and they did damage to us. We have trauma from it.
Okay.
So B wounds.
B wounds.
Bad things done to us. Wounding, I'm going to give some descriptions, just lay it out. Wounding occurs by bad things that happen: physical, emotional, verbal, sexual abuse, abandonment, control. This affects the memory part of the brain.
Okay.
It affects our memory.
Okay.
If the trauma is intense enough, dissociation may occur.
Yes.
And left unresolved, separation from yourself can occur. That's a fracturing of the soul.
Right. Right.
So we dissociate if it's strong enough. So if that trauma is so strong that it's overwhelming to us, we will dissociate from it. Everybody has a capacity to dissociate.
Right.
When you drive home from Nashville to Brentwood or Franklin, and you realize that you didn't even pay attention for the last 10 miles.
Isn't that something?
That's dissociation.
Yes, it is.
That is dissociation. Your brain has the ability to remove and go into separate places.
Mm-hmm.
So when trauma is bad enough, we dissociate. So where you talk about, I don't want to lose people, I won't go into this in detail, but multiple personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder, that is just dissociation to a severe degree. They actually separate from their own heart and from their own soul and their own mind. And sometimes some of their parts form personalities. That's what that is. It's just severe dissociation.
Wow.
So, okay, if the pain, so now, how do you activate a B wound? Memory.
Yes. So
if it's not dissociated, if you're not suppressing it,
right,
then you can remember it. I remember. If you can say, yeah, I remember the time when Daddy beat up my right, or Daddy beat me to a pulp one night, then you have the memory, then you can deal with it because it's a memory and you can bring it, it's at the surface, so you can deal with it. Critical to recovery. So memory of bad events must be recovered and exposed to healing.
Yes.
The recovery period. So when memory is present and help is sought, healing can take place quickly. And resolving dissociation can take a long time. So sometimes suppression is so strong, and that's a protection mechanism.
Sure,
that's God-given.
Absolutely.
Because we need to not look at it. If looking at it will overwhelm us.
That's right. I compartmentalize things. That's
Absolutely.
how I do it. And that's how
protection.
I've gotten through life.
I think our heart knows when we're ready to look at something.
Yes.
So you never force anybody. You never push someone. You respect where people are. When they're ready to deal with it, it'll come up to the surface.
It will.
And then it's time, not
That's
before.
right.
So the thing here is that don't discount lesser traumas. Some people hear other stories and go, oh my gosh, that didn't happen to me. And suddenly they actually discount their own traumas.
Well, they teach you about that at onsite, because you sit there and you listen for 6.5 days to these stories in your small group, and they say, they taught us, there's just because theirs may not be as bad as yours. I mean, do not discount. I mean, yours may not be as bad as yours. Theirs may not be as bad. No, yours may not be as bad as theirs. There we go. Don't discount that, right? Your trauma is still your trauma, and it's still your story.
Don't invalidate your own pain.
That's right.
Two siblings can grow up in the same household and have a very, very different experience.
Yes, they
sometimes
sure can.
One sibling is trying to pursue, and they're going back and taking a look at their wounds and ask a sibling, did you have was this hurtful to you? And they look at them like, are you crazy?
Well, you hear stories about that all the time.
That wasn't a big deal.
That's right.
And that's why it's a dangerous thing to ask them that, because our pain is specific to us.
Yes.
If it was traumatic to us, it was traumatic to us. That's all that matters.
That's exactly right.
You're not assigning the trauma to who it happened from. You're saying, you're owning the trauma yourself. You're saying, I had a traumatic response to this event. Nobody can argue with that. You had trauma with it.
That's right.
It matters to you. The way that you were made up, you might have had a more sensitive heart. You might have seen something or heard something that was in a different way than anybody else who was in that environment. It's okay.
That's right.
If it's trauma to you, it's trauma to you.
That's right.
And then denying, avoiding, or ignoring wounds will not make them go away.
Yeah, I know that firsthand.
So it is a lie.
Yep, I know.
That time heals all wounds.
No, ooh.
So emotions.
Ooh, I love that. It is a lie.
Do not know time. Emotions not bound by time. Wow. They're absolutely not bound by time.
I learned that last year.
When you are ready to go back into a wound, and somebody goes back, when you go back and you remember and you're ready and you're safe enough, and you go back and you start to go back to a wound, you will jump into that if you really feel what you felt. You will start feeling, sensing, smelling, feeling like the age you were, as if you're picking up right where you left off.
It was unbelievable, that experience that I experienced.
That is evidence. It's just been sitting there on the shelf. It does not go away with time. So
no, that's a great quote, though. It's a lie that time heals all wounds.
Yeah. Man. So a wound. So these have been significant in my life.
These are the absence.
Wounds of
these
absence.
are the neglect kind of wounds. Okay.
So again, to start it off, we need life poured into us. That's how health is made. And wounding occurs here by what is not received. So maybe we didn't have bonding.
Right.
Maybe we never had security or safety. Maybe.
Do you know, I want to interrupt you here, because this is interesting, because I feel like I had A and B wounds. Do you find that people have both? Because my mother told me 2 years ago, when she was diagnosed with dementia, my mom and I never have gotten along. There was abuse. There was all kinds of problems in the house. We never got along. She said to me in anger, December of 2016, I'll never forget it, you started pulling away from me when you were 1 year old. 1 year old. What? Who pulls away from their mother at 1 year old? So I completely, for what, and in my anger, I screamed back at her, well, maybe I knew something then. I mean, and then that didn't go anywhere, because that turned into one big cluster of a fight.
You may not have felt safe.
Isn't that something? So I never even thought about that, that maybe I didn't feel safe with her, because I never felt safe with her to this day
your
at
heart,
53.
Your spirit just sensed something. And you didn't feel safe to draw close to her. So, what we didn't receive, joy, love, again. So it affects the brain differently. So B wounds, what bad that happens to us affects our memory.
Right.
It gets fixed into our memory.
Okay.
A wounds are affects where strong emotions are handled.
Where strong emotions
So the emotional management part of the brain is affected.
Okay.
Emotional management part is affected when we do not receive what we needed. So again, remember that pain was activated with B wounds by the memory. With A wounds and wounds of absence, pain is activated by seeing the good things that were absent.
Oh.
That's why, so
if you see somebody or if you see people having a fabulous relationship with their mother or their father, or they have a great.
Yes.
Interesting. Because that was always a trigger for me, and I always gravitated towards my friend Margot and my friend Lori, who had these nuclear families. Yeah. And I would associate with them, and I would be triggered though as well, because I was sad because they had that and I didn't.
That's exactly it.
Is that it?
That's exactly it.
Wow.
For me, I would see those commercials. It's usually a diamond commercial. You see this older woman and man, a couple, walking down a path through the woods, and they're holding hands,
Yes.
and they're just
Doing life together
They're
into
just
the end, to their
walking
golden years.
peacefully, lovingly off. And I would look at that, and something in my heart would go, ah, what I wouldn't have done to have seen my parents have that kind of relationship. I never saw that. And I'd be sitting in a restaurant, and in the booth next to me is this family, and the parents are talking with their
Yes.
children and communicating in a way that's loving and kind, and everybody's considered, and what everyone has to say is important and valued. And my heart would go, ah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we never had
I would
that.
come to tears.
Yes.
And I would just go, I never had that growing up. I never experienced that. That's an A wound.
That's an A wound.
That's an A wound, a wound of absence. When
Wow.
you see it, it
Okay.
triggers.
It triggers.
When
Yeah,
you
sure.
see, movies can be really powerful
Yes.
because you'll see a scene in a movie and you can fall apart because it's an A wound. It's something that was absent, and you see this happen. I was with a good buddy of mine who was
This
involved with
makes
theotherapy. We're both facilitators there, and we went to see Antoine Fisher. I don't know if you ever saw Antoine Fisher.
No.
A boy is terribly abused. I believe it's based on a real story. At the end of the movie, at the risk of spoiling it for anybody who goes out to see it, he's done this journey where he went back and pursued relationships. He has to go to another city, and he's looking up his relatives to find out and ask questions and find out stuff about his mom and this and that. But his relatives see what he's up to. He's got some aunts and uncles and cousins. And without him knowing, they prepare this huge feast for him. And he opens the door. They walk him in, and he opens the door. And there's his grandmother.
Ah.
Come, she says, and the table's full of food, and everybody's lying. And all his relatives are there to make him feel welcome, which he never had that experience
Yes.
growing up. To
Yes.
say, you are part of our family. We accept you. Well, my friend never felt accepted in this family, and he just started bawling.
Oh,
He just started bawling. That's an A wound.
that's an A wound. Do you know,
That's
and
an
I
A
know
wound.
we're even short on time too, but that happened to me during the Mamma Mia 2, the movie. I don't know if y'all saw this, but the Mamma Mia 2, so where Cher was in it. But I sat down with my daughter, Ella, and Mamma Mia, Donna and her daughter are super close in Mamma Mia, right? I mean, they have been bonded from day one because she had her, as a single mom. I cried the entire, and I'm not a big crier. I cried the entire movie from the first scene to the end. Ella was worried about me. She was like, Mama, this was just last year. But that was an A wound that was, I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out if I was crying because the three best friends and me and Margot and Trish and Kim, all of us and Billy,
Yeah.
I couldn't figure it out. But it was the whole mom thing.
Yeah.
I bawled the entire movie. I mean, it was
Yeah.
terrible. I need to watch it again because I missed it
Yeah.
because I was crying so
Yeah.
hard that I didn't have that.
Yeah.
And
When
now I
would
know what
teach
triggered it.
this-
I couldn't figure it out.
When I would teach this lesson at theotherapy, sometimes people would spontaneously just start bawling in the audience. And if you ask them, would you like to share what you're going through? And they would just say, I've been working on my B wounds for so long.
Yes.
I never understood this, and I couldn't get to them. And I was so stuck, and I just felt I'm can't be reached. These places are places in me that are never going to get to, and I couldn't figure it out. And this is what it is. It's an A wound.
It's an A wound. And I'm
It's a
telling
different
you,
kind
you
of
got
wound.
to
You don't
fix.
heal the same way.
No, you don't.
So let me finish that. real
Okay,
quick.
yeah, we got to do that.
So critical to recovery from an A wound is enduring love relationships where trust is developed and feelings can be expressed.
Woo!
So it's relational. So
Mhm.
it's not a memory. You need someone safe to help you walk back to the memory, to grieve what's lost, to identify false beliefs that came in during the wounding, and maybe help you connect with God or a higher power. It's not like that. You need relationships over time because you can't end around the fact that you never had the life poured into you. We still need the life poured into us.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it comes with safe relationships where people understand and aren't afraid with your wounding, and they have life to give to you. And so they just let you be where you are, and they pour life into you. That's what's necessary to recover from A wounds. So it
Yes.
takes community.
It does take community,
Takes
and that is
community.
one of my big steps. You
So
gotta
they
have it.
take longer periods of time because of this, because it takes connection with others who can provide what was absent. Easier to remember than type B trauma. So it's harder because you don't really remember these. And so we are likely to not give as significance to them because they're not as understood as well as B wounds are.
Right.
So,
Wow.
yeah. So people end up blaming themselves.
Sure they do.
Oftentimes when they're stuck in A wounds and don't understand what to do with them. There's a lot of brain science. We're probably short on
Yeah,
time.
we're 10 minutes.
The amygdala is triggered when
Oh,
we have
yes.
traumas and trauma happens, and there's a whole brain science with that that's fascinating. And where joy comes in when we're an infant, how joy actually ends up healing us from the part that plays. It's a lot of brain science that's really interesting.
Joy is such a huge word, right? I mean, joy comes from within.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know what joy really is?
what?
It's when we communicate to each other that I love being with you.
Yes.
Who you are.
Yes.
Who you are brings pleasure to me.
As you are.
And
Not trying to change you, not trying. Yes.
women are so much better. Women walk into a room and will almost scream. The voice goes up. The voice goes up. And I look at that, I'm like, guys don't do that.
We do scream when we see each other.
But
I love it.
It's a precious thing because that is pure joy.
Yeah, it's
That
joy.
is pure joy of people
Yes.
saying, I love to see you. I like them. And they look at each other's eyes. There's brain science that shows that when you look eye to eye and say that and look at that expression, it's like 6 times, I think, a second or something. But
Yes.
there's a message going back between your brains that builds up a joy strength in your brain.
Isn't that incredible?
That when you
And we
communicate that
don't
message.
have joy anymore.
Well, think
We've
about
lost.
people who never had that, who didn't
That's right.
receive
Never
that
received
from
it.
their family of origin.
That's right. I
It's a
didn't get it
huge
from my
deficit.
mother from one side. My dad, I did, but I didn't see my dad all the time. So, you know, it's we all have wounds. And the bottom line is we all have wounds. We all have A's and B's. Nobody's, you know, you can't say yours are less than someone else's because like you just said, I mean, they are true, your wounds, and they are just as important and just as significant as somebody else's wounds who are huge. You know, so we could talk about this stuff forever, but I want you to look up A and B wounds. I find this fascinating. I think this is so important with self-discovery and healing.
Yeah.
And whether or not you're in therapy or not, you know, I am a big believer in therapy. I'm a big believer. Although once I left on site, I don't know that I could sit and talk therapy ever again. That experiential therapy was unbelievable for me. That was where it took it to the root core, back to the A wound, to the moment, the big trauma that I first remember happened, you know, and that's unbelievable when you can walk back in safety with something like that. So I highly recommend that you all find somebody, if you can, you know, to feel that safe and to work through these wounds, because we deserve to live the life that God designed us to live.
That's right.
No matter what our childhood is, right?
We have to fight for it.
You bet we have to fight for it, and we have to
hearts
work
are
on it
worth
every.
fighting for it.
Yes, they are. And you know, here's what I was going to say. Toxic stress is what the American Academy of Pediatrics has named this. Toxic stress, right? And it kills us. That is a fact. It kills us. We know that. We saw those statistics from that. You know, and we have to start with the parents, right? Being educated on decreasing the toxic stress in the household as much as we educated them. This is what I wrote out. You know, we have to educate the parents on toxic stress and emotional wounds and A's and B wounds as much as we educate these new parents on covering the outlets, right? Locking the cabinets behind you here, covering the swimming pools and the toilets so the babies don't hurt themselves. It is equally as important, if not more than that, preserving these children's, you know, their heart, you know. So Dr. Robert Block, he's the former president of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and he stated that adverse childhood events or experiences are the single greatest unaddressed public health threat facing our nation today. And I said, when we know better, we have the responsibility to do better. And so you know better. You just got 54 minutes of a teeny tiny piece of the iceberg on this, but you know better.
And
the science doesn't lie. Self-care.
Right? We're saying that resiliency is great, building up resilience, learning tools that can help us calm our system down, our vagus nerve and parasympathetic and sympathetic. But the wounds that we have, these wounds go deeper than control mechanisms. It's about caring for our heart and for our soul, for our spirit, and it's self-care.
You bet it is.
Give ourselves, our hearts are worth fighting for, and we have to spend time with ourselves and with safe people to pursue the healing.
With safe people. And that means if you have people in your life that are not safe, friends or what have you, there's nothing wrong with eliminating them in your life. I mean, cutting them out.
Yep.
I say this all the time to patients, and I've cut
There's
people out.
toxic relationships, right?
That's right. So the science doesn't lie, my friends. It doesn't lie, right? And adversity affects us across the lifespan. So it's treatable and it is beatable. It is. I mean, right? It is. As healthcare
Absolutely.
providers, you know, we have to step up and we have to have the courage to ask the hard questions. And we have to change our practices to include, you know, this ACE questionnaire, in my opinion, because we know where we're starting from.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome. That's a great start.
I mean, I think so. Absolutely. And so
You're not only arming yourself with what they need and what's happened, root cause, but you're helping them become self-aware as well.
well, that's exactly right. You know, and I teach people, you have to heal the gut. We are healing the gut first. Well, if you can't control what you're eating, because you're trying,
Right,
you're
that's right.
eating your
Exactly.
emotions,
That's
right?
exactly
You're
right.
eating your feelings, you're eating
Right.
your
How much
trauma.
progress are you
Well,
gonna
what
make?
am I doing over there
Exactly.
telling you got to cut out gluten, dairy, sugar, soy, corn, eggs, peanuts? When, my
And
gosh,
they're stuck in flight or fright
they're
syndrome.
stuck, you know. And it
Exactly.
was a light bulb moment for me last night when I discovered this. And I think, man, you know, I'm sorry to anyone that I have, you know, neglected this on, because I didn't know, but now I do know. And now I have this questionnaire, and I can tell you right now, every single one of you need to take the test and let us know where your score is. But we can do better. It's already been an hour. Do you have anything else you want to say? Some resources or?
I don't know if you're going to post these or not. There's
Yes.
an article I read just recently on Kelly Brogan, who's an MD.
Oh, I love her.
She's awesome.
A
So
mind
it's
of
not
your
her
own.
article, but she posted this. It's why being emotional is actually good for us. It was a really good article.
Really?
It talks a lot about parenting and children, actually,
Wow.
but it's well written.
I love Kelly Brogan.
great
So it's
job,
on her
yeah.
website,
It
probably.
is.
I bet
It
it's
is
under
on
her
her
website,
website.
which is kellybroganmd.com. I know that off the top of my head because I do I read a lot of her stuff.
A book that's a core for theotherapy is Emotional Freedom.
Emotional Freedom.
By
Okay.
Dr. Mario Rivera.
Okay.
He's the one who founded theotherapy, and then the Living from the Heart that Jesus gave you.
Okay, so that's the book. I can't remember who asked. Somebody asked what was the name of that book. It was what? Living from the Heart that Jesus gave you.
Living from the Heart Jesus gave you. If you
Living from
Google
the
it,
Heart Jesus gave
you'll
you.
find it. It's available on Amazon.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Okay, next week, Dr. Motley's going to be back, and we're going to, or I think he is. I texted him today, and I haven't heard from him, but supposedly we're talking about candida next week. So
Nice.
sugar, that's exactly right, candida.
Yeah.
Excuse me, which is from the mouth to the toes. We have
Yeah.
candida, so we're going to be talking about that. March the 15th in the office at 10:30. We have a lunch and learn with Dr. Cheryl Burdett, who is the owner of Dunwoody Labs, and she's one of the medical directors of Zymogen Labs as well, or Zymogen products as well. She's going to be in there talking about your food sensitivity test, your intestinal barrier, zonulin, histamine, DAO. 10:30. I will hopefully get that event made and put up tonight, and it'll also be on the website. You will not want to miss this. She's coming in from Atlanta to do this. So I'm so excited about that.
Very
She
nice.
owns the lab. It is her lab. We're going to be talking all kinds of things there.
Mhm.
And then, let's see, that's it. It is a lie that time heals all wounds. Holy cow. That hit me right in the heart. Because I've
How many
always
times have I
said
been
that.
told that?
Oh yeah, time heals all wounds.
Just give it time, it'll feel better, it'll go away.
So guys, the takeaway is you're perfect exactly the way you are. Wounded, A wounds, B wounds, or not. You are perfect here and now. I'm telling you, you are, and you are enough.
Yeah.
We all have things we can work on. But now that you know about adverse childhood experiences and you know about B wounds, A wounds, and B wounds, start working on these things, right?
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
He thought we were like some big camera in here and all this. It's just my computer set on top of a Whole30 cookbook, a Trim Healthy Mama cookbook, and a lap pad over here on the table. It's so
Yeah.
not fancy.
Pausing thought from me. pursue your healing, because you know what? Beyond healing, it's about freedom.
You bet.
You want to be free to live. And that's what the healing enables us to become free.
And you do this for yourself first, right? And when you're
right.
healed,
We
it's
give
little
from what-
trickles,
yeah.
trickles, right?
We give
Little
from what we have
ripples, little
received.
ripples. That's right. And it creates huge, huge changes. But until you're healed, your children can't be healed, your spouse, this is about you. And you deserve to do the hard work, right? Because
Yes.
we're worthy
We're worth
to
it.
be number one,
Our
and
heart
we're
is
worthy.
worth it.
That's exactly right. So guys, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's 8:00 on the dot. I don't know that I've ever finished on time here, but we love you guys. Have a good Sunday night, and I'll see you guys next week. Thank you for sharing this, and we appreciate you. We'll see you
Bye-bye.
next week.